Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Lens, which is episode 55. And I can't drive 55, so
Do you drive
great
more than
singing our
55?
song. Come on, you got to know that one, Chad.
Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I think of it every time I'm coming home from some investigation, and like late at night, just want to get home.
I don't know what you're talking about. Driving late at night investigation. Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
you? Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway. Oh, that's because you have people drive you. I see. You've got that swag level. You can get there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I have not achieved that masterfulness yet. So self-driver. Oh well. Well, welcome everybody. Sorry, rambling as always. This is yet another Tuesday. How did the week go by so fast? Anything going on this week, Chad? Did you do anything exciting this weekend?
I did. I did do some
I know
things.
you're like everywhere.
I was at two different places. Like Greg O'Brien was like, "Weren't you just at another place?" When I ran into him at the, I went to Selma. They were having a holistic healers fair. I went and had an energy healing session. It was an amazing experience.
Okay.
If anybody's interested, it was a Reiki session with some EIT, I don't know, but the healer, she was very good at what she did, and I walked out feeling refreshed and then exhausted for 2 days.
Yeah,
and
sure.
then I went to White Hill, and I ran into these wonderful people.
I was going to say a miracle happened.
So yeah, it was great to see Todd and Carmela. I saw Ron and Lourdes. I saw Kendra, who we investigated with the other week. I saw Talisha, who we haven't seen for a long time.
Yes, of course.
So, and I'm sure there's more people. Kyle and Greg and all sorts of people. So it was a good experience. White Hill was a lot of fun. Always a good experience there. They had a bunch of great people.
Hi, Jim. I'm glad.
So, and yeah, it was.
Oh, I usually do too. So,
it was actually nice to meet Todd and Carmela. So, yep, it was fun.
very cool.
So, and I heard some exciting news last night that we talk about Ron and Lourdes, and we had Tony on a while ago. Tony is going to be in the area in July.
Tony Rathman.
Rathman and Sheree are going to be in the area in July at the Bash, Gettysburg Bash, and then they're going to be back in the area in Gettysburg when they are presenting at a paranormal thing consortium sort of thing in Gettysburg.
It's the consortium. Yep.
So I'm glad that we're actually going to get to meet them as well. So
yeah,
I'm going to make sure that I get out to meet them. So.
Looking forward to that weekend actually. And the Bash is the Bash. I mean, it's always fun. So, but and it's a great opportunity to mix and mingle with your peers, and like all Paracons are kind of thing. But this one has a little bit more. It's a little different because it's Gettysburg, of course, and it's just fun spots.
I saw Chris Mendez too when I was at White Hill. He was there with his family, so it was like old home day.
It was nice.
So, and you mowed your lawn.
It's hard work, dude. So you really trumped me on all that. So, cheers to you.
So,
and this weekend we have some fun coming up. So, we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, probably more in a minute, but.
I was gonna say it's a fast presentation if we're talking about it in a minute, Jamie.
Well, it might be. I don't know, man. I never know how this is gonna go. I got pages though. Depends how fast I read.
So what are you talking about tonight, Jamie?
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I really don't know how to say it because it's like anything else. There's variables. Dingonek or Dingonek, an African cryptid that is. From the colonial era, with the folks are coming into the area. They were told tales of this creature, and it is a fabulous, or I should say fabulous. It is a fabulous tale, but it's a fantastical tale as well. Pages and pages and pages. Yes, thank you, Todd. That means 3 pages total. I have actually more than that. But with that. The tales grew and the lore built, and we're going to explore what was shared and what might be, and we'll go from there and decide if it's paranormal or not.
Okay.
Let's go to the first slide. This is a dingonek. It's quite a thing, right? It is upwards of 14 to 18 feet long. It has either the head of a dog, or the head of a leopard, or the head of an otter. It's largely depends on who's describing it, and the body of a fish. And you can kind of see there's a tail going around the back there, like a paddle tail. It has scales or shells like an armadillo, which we see here, long tusks and or fangs. So kind of like a saber tooth kind of thing going on. Feet as large as a hippo's, with sharpened claws on each foot, and a powerful tail to help it navigate through the water. So this is a water cryptid. But with legs, of course, it can come up on land as well. So it gets around. So we'll find out that in a minute. It said to be found in the East African rivers and lakes. So think colonial era. Back in the mid 1800s, early 1900s, East Africa was a highly unexplored area. West Africa, unfortunately, was more so, unfortunately, due to the slave trades and the path along the coast, getting to the spice trade as well, way before then. So we knew West Africa, the western coast of Africa, and the Southern Horn, but not up kind of in the area where we're going to talk about tonight. So an underexplored area, at least. So it's kind of a thing. But there's two guys who were there. So next slide. These fellas. The guy on the left is John Alfred Jordan, and the fellow on the right, he's a British explorer, and the fellow on the right is Edgar Beecher Bronson, and say that 5 times fast. Mm-hmm. Edgar Beecher, I can't do it. He is an American, but he is a big game hunter. So you can imagine Africa at that time was pretty wild. There were still lots and lots and lots of game available, and we were going over in droves trying to come home with a trophy. So, but in 1909, so we're moving out of toward the end of the colonial period. British big game hunter John Alfred Jordan recounted his experience seeing the dingonek to American hunter Edgar Beecher Bronson. Next slide. So in this recount, Jordan claimed he saw the creature swimming in one of the tributaries to Lake Victoria, which we'll get to that in a moment. But Lake Victoria is one of the largest lakes in the world, but at the time was largely unknown to colonizers. He described it as the hideous old haunter of a nightmare. So that's a great line to open a story, right? Mm-hmm. Going on to describe the creature with the head of a dog, the body and tail of a fish. When asked to describe the creature's legs, Jordan stated, "Blessed if I know, the same second that he stood up on his tail, I got too busy using my own legs to steady his." And I don't blame him. Go back to another slide, that bad boy pops up somewhere, I'm out. Bronson was skeptical of Jordan's story, so he interviewed his staff to get their account as well. He found their accounts differed in no essential detail to Jordan's tale. So they corroborated his story of what he saw that day. Bronson also noted that some indigenous people on the northern shores of Lake Victoria called the fish beast Dingonek, and that's where the name comes from. So it is a local lore name. Let's go to the next slide. So step back a little bit in time. This fellow, Clement Hill, who was the British superintendent for African protectorates, so he was actually Sir Clement Hill, was on a steam-powered launch on Lake Victoria. So the steam-powered launch looks something like this image on the right. Shallow draft, low to the water. Hill claimed to have seen something resembling a dingonek appear in the water. He was unsure what it was, but was quite certain that it was not a crocodile. The creature rose from the water and tried to seize a sailor from the bow of the launch. The sailor was saved, and the creature disappeared back into the water, and the cruise continued with no further issue. So, a engagement of sorts with something that would resemble the dingonek. Another uncredited story comes from a European who swears that when the Mara River was flooded, he saw a creature floating down the river on a large log. Its tail was in the water still, but its length was estimated at 16 feet. It was described to have scales, spots like a leopard, a head like an otter, but the fangs described by others were not visible. Apparently it didn't turn and smile at him, right? That's what happened anyway. That's the account.
Okay.
It's also interesting that, with what we're talking about is basically like Kenya, and in the area, like just in the south end of Egypt, all the way down in South Africa, there is rock art from a cave in a place called Brackfontein Ridge in South Africa that depicts a walrus-like creature with similar appearances to the Dingonek. Now, given that this is like 2,100 miles away, and although there are rivers theoretically that could get you there if you did some portages, it is highly unlikely that the Lake Victoria Basin and something in South Africa could be connected or related. But it's interesting that there's art. So perhaps there's a much farther ranging territory than maybe originally thought. It's definitely a curiosity how it could be there. So, weird, right?
Right.
So given that at this time in the world, large parts of Africa were still unknown or unexplored, most Americans and Europeans offered little surprise or disbelief when they were told stories of something like a Dingonek existing, right? Because it's even though it's fantastical, it's like, well, we don't know what else could be out here.
Right.
Let's go to the next slide. This was one of those things that no one believed. So this is called an okapaki, and it was until the early 1900s that someone finally documented its existence. There were tales of this zebra, donkey, giraffe tongue thing running around, in the out in the jungle. And we finally took, probably 50, 60 years once we first started arriving in that area to finally sight one. So if this is a point to say that there could be anything else out there, it certainly would be plausible. So go to the next slide. Also, the very existence of Lake Victoria itself, which was one of the world's largest lakes, was not documented by a white explorer until 1858. So, it's quite a long time. It's not that long ago, for that matter. Right. To be fair, with a surface area over 23,000 square miles, and a shoreline of over 2,000 miles, the lake would have been extremely hard to fully survey in the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the technologies and what they could do. You had to walk it. You'd walk it or sail it. So,
right. I mean, at that point, they may have thought it as another ocean.
Yes, exactly. So it's massive. So let's go back one more slide, please. Let's go forward a slide, but let's go back to the story with John Alfred Jordan for a moment. Later on, the first account he presented was in 1909, but in 1917 he provided a full account that's documented, and this is what he said. Before me lay a totally unknown monster. Let's go next slide. Which I should be the first to encounter, and the thrill of possession was upon me. He then did what almost all explorers and colonizers did at the time. He raised his rifle and shot the creature, as he said, just behind the leopard ear. He adds, then an extraordinary thing occurred. The beast turned, and facing the bank, leapt straight upwards into the air, standing, as it appeared to me, 10 to 12 feet on end. What happened after that, I do not know, for losing my nerve, I scrambled up the bank. And this is where he didn't know what the feet looked like because he was using his own.
Right.
Jordan goes on to add that he returned to the river and searched in vain for the creature he was almost certain he had killed, but no body was ever found or recovered. So why does that story matter? Why does any of this matter? So tales of the Dingonek were often told to white colonizers as an effort to scare them away, right? So the stories became so common that when a colonizer went into the bush and did not return, it was said that it was because the Dingonek had claimed him. To the indigenous people of Eastern Africa, when the Dingonek was seen, it was a portent of good fortune, heavy crops, a thriving herd, and very good health. The intent to scare away colonizers also had another more serious intention. Should the Dingonek be killed, the opposite effect would occur, and drought, famine, illness would follow. Incidentally, around the time Jordan claimed to have shot the Dingonek, a deadly outbreak of sleeping sickness swept through the indigenous communities of Lake Victoria's northern shore. Coincidence? Maybe.
Right.
But also some opportunity. So let's go next slide. What could this really be? Okay, it's fantastical, right? That creature is crazy with all of the different pieces of stuff put together. What it likely was, and it's a real thing, is a Nile monitor lizard. And you can see on the upper right hand side there, this lizard has a massive territory where it lives in. It's pretty much everything sub-Saharan, with a very few exceptions in southern tips of Africa. But where we're looking at is, and you see Lake Victoria there is that big spot, up in the upper right. It's that big. You can see it on the map of the continent.
Right.
Certainly well there. And even down into South Africa, where rock art was, perhaps there was some tail, and then there was lizards nearby that resembled. So, given the overarching fear colonizers would have had of running into a dingonek, it is certainly possible that anything unusual they came across would have been one, right?
Yeah.
Why not? The logical culprit then would have been the Nile lizard, the monitor lizard. Native to most of sub-Saharan Africa, it is the largest lizard in Africa, with the crocodile being the only reptile that's larger. It can live up to 30 years. They are olive green to black in color and have cream or yellow stripes on the jaw and head, with rows of yellowish V-shaped stripes along the base of its skull and its back. Maybe these stripes were in spots, these V's were mistaken for leopard spots. Certainly none of the rest. Like if you're like, what the heck, and trying to run, you put 2 and 2 together, you make it what you want to be.
Right.
And it's your story. You can tell whatever you want to. The only detraction from this being the potential for what the claims are for size is that the Nile monitor lizards only grow to be about 8 feet long, and not the 14 to 16 feet that were originally reported as a dingonek.
Right.
Now, again, back to it's your story. You tell whatever you want to.
Right. I was going to say, Jamie, when I lived in Brunei,
yes,
I had a monitor lizard that was sort of trapped in a fenced-in area where I lived, and it may have only been 8 foot long, but I can tell you it looked 12 to 14 when we were back there. So,
well, sure, 6 inches, right? I got it. Okay.
So, and they're fierce. Look, I mean, those things are fierce, and they seem mean. I don't, so I can see how this could be exaggerated. So,
absolutely.
Sorry to say.
In the reboot of the James Bond series films with the redo of Casino Royale, I think it is, there's a scene with a monitor lizard in a drop-in place, and this thing is massive. So it would not be something I want to run across, walking home one night kind of thing, much less to be out in the brush somewhere and, pop upon one.
Yep.
Well, let's go back to the size thing. So, let's think about it like a fishtail, right? You come up, you go fishing and you get this fish, but then when you get home, you tell everybody it was this big or this big. I'm going off the screen to go big, but we do that. We tend to exaggerate our tails, right? Because we're always the hero in our stories when it comes to things like this. So you want it to be some fearsome thing that you overcame, you triumphed over. So I get it. Okay, I can live with that. But it is realistically to say that it was likely a lizard or perhaps a cat, an actual like jaguar, puma, leopard, that would have been prevalent in the jungle. And just seeing it quickly and not really catching all of it, you're just kind of making up stuff as you go.
Right.
And again, stories, so we'll get to that. So let's go to the next slide. So Lake Victoria, right? While the existence of the creature, like the dingonek, is theoretically possible, the accounts of its sightings and the stories told of its existence significantly dropped off as the 1900s progressed. So we get out of the colonization era, and the tales started to slide away. This can likely be chalked up to the assimilation of indigenous peoples into the European and Western cultures, and the realization that the colonizers were there to stay. They're not buying the story anymore.
Right.
However, it does not dismiss the longstanding belief that the dingonek was a protector of the native peoples and a detractor for those intruding on and claiming their lands. There is that interestingness to it. So to me, the dingonek is much like the Wendigo, which we did an episode on a while back, and even the Kustaka, which is part of North American Native Indian lore, where its existence was at least partially intended to scare the colonizers and thwart their intrusion and the subsequent taking of their land that was to follow. So, as we moved in the North American set, as we moved east to west, the tales of our approach were passed on. So, as we left the East Coast and started to move into the Midwest, especially in the northern tier, that's when the Wendigo came in. As we reached Alaska, again, the last frontier still, but a place that we have certainly explored, the tales came in as well. And if you go into the brush and into the woods, this will be waiting for you, and you shouldn't do it. So while this is likely a fantastical tale passed down through the years, who knows? Maybe the Dingonek is real and is alive and well, hiding in the vastness of Lake Victoria and its many tributaries waiting to be found. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
All right.
It's interesting, right? I mean, I think, I'm going to say paranormal or not, that's what we should do here, I guess. But I'll let you go with that, and I'll add something at the end.
It's one of those that I definitely want to say I'd like to believe it's there. But it's so hard. But, as we colonize, as we expand, we push things away. And it's only until things get run out of room that we start seeing them again. Sure. Which is, we're having that so much now. I mean, with deer, we see those all the time, but they're starting to become, it's like every day you see them, and foxes and things like that.
Yeah.
So we may have, with something like the Dingonek, we may have pushed that into undeveloped land, because there's still a lot of Africa that has not been explored, discovered.
Sure. There's so much that's been preserved as well that we're never going to build upon or take over or deforest or mine.
And I'm sure there's tribes that we haven't even really discovered.
Sure, tribes are coming out of the Amazon all the time. And let's say all the time, but still, annually, it's an annual occurrence now, where it was many before. But yeah, absolutely, and it's such a vast place.
Right. So I mean, I want to hold on to the thought that there are still things out there like this that we haven't come up with. And it's interesting that when one was killed, there was famine and there was disease, and or not killed, but at least shot at. It's interesting. Coincidence? Question mark. So I'm undecided. I hope that there are these things out there.
Well, I'll leave this to the group. What do you guys think? I'll say this. I'm with you 100%. I want this to be real. I'd love for this to be real. And any of the things we've discussed, any of the cryptids and the bizarre things. As long as it's not some monstrous thing that's going to hurt us all. But this is, if this is true, it is some creature of nature, that deserves to have its space and its things and an existence. So it'd be really cool if it could be true. And again, maybe Africa is still, it's getting smaller, but it is still not small. So,
right.
But it'd be cool if we could figure that out.
Mm-hmm. So, waiting for responses here.
Yeah, I think I put everyone to sleep.
Well, don't you have to remember it's a 30-second delay. So
it's true, Jim. Now that's the interesting thing as well. Now I want to quantify this to say that if you consider the era of the 1840s to 1910 20s, that window of time was long before forensics truly existed. So bones could have been found, but they not necessarily would have known it's a Dingonek. As carcasses were found, things were getting, the food chain was well in play. So things could have happened that we left the carcass behind it. It wouldn't have looked like this, as it was decomposed. So maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bert, I agree. I think that's where Chad and I land on this as well. I again wish we could get it and figure it out. Okay.
So I don't want to ever come across this thing, or at least not up close.
Yeah, from a distance, like in a zoo. Not even there. Yeah, zoos are. We can go into that another time, but the humanity that we take away. Well, humanity, but the callousness of zoos. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So,
Come over a hill or come around a bend or pass by a tree and you look over and there he is, or look up in a tree and there he is, or something climbing out of the water. Nope.
I'll run into a ghost anytime. One of these things,
Yeah,
I pass on.
exactly. I'm all in for the ghost. Bring it. You know, this thing. Nope.
I mean, but if this is an illustration that somebody came up with from their memory, it doesn't really match a monitor lizard, but some of the stuff does.
Yeah, I mean, a general size too big, of course. The girth of its torso too much. The head obviously way wrong, but the feet aren't that far off from a lizard.
Right.
You know, there are claws, and the tail, of course, would put it in the spirit of it. But again, you know, and it's like that. Oh, what's the word I want? When everybody kind of sees the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
it kind of, you know, once you get it in your head that this thing is out there, that's what you're going to see. You know, it's like a stereo almost. So, and again, it goes to the gullibility, perhaps to some degree. And you know, I often wonder too, and I will talk about this more on my next episode, about the sensitivity of certain people. Like, can you see something differently if you're more sensitive? You know, I know we know about investigations, right? That's what we do.
Right.
But you know, for a thing like this, you know, the visual of it, would it be different?
So, Chris, yeah, I agree. Thank you, Jamie, for presenting this. It's something I had never heard of. It's fascinating.
Well, I didn't either until I came across it like a couple weeks ago. And I don't know about you, but I keep like a running little tablet of ideas for shows and stuff. Yeah. Well, that's another part of it. Absolutely. You know, we try to make it be something we can understand or comprehend when it's something totally uniquely different. It's like seeing Jesus on your toast.
And Heather brings up a good point here. When you see a giant lizard like this, and your mind goes way out.
Yeah.
So
when you get past the oh shit moment, right? You know, and you're booking it, your fight or flight, your flight takes over. You know, you're just kind of piecing it together later.
Yep. Again, new creatures are found in the ocean. Could have, the platypus, duck-billed platypus. You know, we don't see that very much anymore.
Yep.
So
perfect. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I wanted to bring us something a little different. Something we've been talking about local stuff lately, you know, as well. So I'm just going to get us back to some of the different stuff that we can come across around the world. So we'll leave it there.
So you've got me intrigued by your next topic, though, because from some hints you've dropped here. So
I'm excited for 2 weeks out.
Yeah,
2 weeks out. I am very excited to come back to this one. Shall I tease, or shall we wait till we get to the later part?
Go ahead. Go. Why not?
All right. So I think if you guys will go back with me to the episode I did on the mystery spot in Santa Cruz, California, I talked about living in Santa Cruz, in the area of Santa Cruz. I lived in SoCal, technically, the next town over, but all of that area from Santa Cruz, down through Big Sur is at the base of the Santa Lucia Mountains. And there has been a kind of a fantastic experience happening in the mountains since probably before time, really, with back to Native Americans, where there have been these things called dark watchers spotted in the mountains on the ridges and the high points that are seemingly looking down on people and they are large, dark shaped shadows with hats and capes and a halo around them. So we're gonna explore that a little bit in depth next time. In 2 weeks. Next week we're going on a road trip next week.
We are.
So we'll get to that too.
And apparently you're going to Africa to look for these on your next family vacation.
Not my next family vacation. No. I was in Africa at Disney, at Animal Kingdom, a couple months, like a month and a half ago. But no, I'm never getting anybody to do this. We might go, but
yeah, that wouldn't
it's a
go
team
well
trip,
either.
right? We'll take a team trip. There's got to be a way to write this off somehow, right? Research trip.
Yeah.
I could not write off my Disney vacation as a business expense for my research project there for the
They
Haunted
wouldn't
Mansion.
let you do that?
No. It's not. Apparently, it's not legit. So,
Oh, all right.
well, no, I still had a good time.
Well, that's good. So,
All right, sir.
Anything else on this, or should we jump up and
I think we hit it pretty good.
Okay.
You know, if anybody goes to Africa and runs across one, let us know. You know, same way if we're ever out on an investigation and somebody walks out of the wall and introduces themselves, shakes your hand, let us know. And we'll be right behind you, but not in front, especially not for the Dingonek.
Exactly. So, stuff coming up
Yeah.
for us. We still only have up through September available on the Boobies website. We're waiting patiently for them to post our other things.
Yep.
But tickets are running out for the next couple things. We're down to 9 tickets for the 18th and down to 10 for June 1st.
Thanks, Todd.
And then we have the second one in June. There's still plenty of tickets available for all that stuff. So
Yeah, they will go as we get closer, though. So if you're looking for some fun things to do this summer, we got it for you.
Mm-hmm. Boobies is always fun. I know Todd and Carmela are looking forward to coming over at some point. They're talking about a whole weekend in Lancaster County. So
cool. Okay.
Some stuff, but we'll definitely have to get together with them and do dinner and talk and things.
Love that. You know, that was last week, right? With the Fulton, like come do the brewery on one night and do the Fulton the next night. You know, see a show at least at the Fulton.
Yeah.
But, no,
and there's some other stuff too. So
yeah, plenty of cool stuff to do here.
Yep. Shows coming up for us. We're waiting, Todd. We're really looking forward to it. So, next week we are at the Commonweal, which is. Do you want to talk about it, Jamie? You sort of found it. So
the Commonweal is here in Lancaster County. It's a community bike shop. It's an easy way of saying it. It's much more than that, but they are. They've opened a satellite location. There are 2 locations in Lancaster City. The home office, the original location is in the Reservoir Park in the pump house there. Really cool old building that they've converted into a bike shop. And then their new location, if you will, which is now many years old, is on North Queen Street in the city, downtown Lancaster. So the satellite location is coming all the way out to Columbia, as Columbia is the head of the Northwest River Trail point, which takes you north up the Susquehanna, up through the towns of Marietta and through the White Cliffs of Conoy, past the Haldeman Mansion, which we're going to do an episode on coming up soon, probably not till middle of June and the end of June. But a really great ride and some scenic old history through the town of Bainbridge as well. Okay. So the Commonweal has a location that is a former seedy, shady dive bar place that has long been closed. So I'm connected to the organization. I asked the executive director if we could have an opportunity to investigate as they were doing their renovations and getting ready to turn it into this really cool place. And he said, "Oh yeah." So we did. A couple of us from the team went. Myself, Chad, David, and Jay went in on a Saturday evening with several of their staff. And we had some interesting stuff happen. We're still trying to get through the evidence. So I don't know exactly how much we're going to be able to present, but we're going to go live to the site and
talk about it. It was a fun evening, introducing a bunch of new people to something they had never done before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, when we do this all the time, right? We at the brewery, we are educators for a large part of what we do there, because a lot of folks have never investigated before. I think it's safe to say most people have watched the show, so they have a premise or an idea of how it goes, but to physically do something, is a lot different than watching it. So the learning curve, by the start to the end, you can see people come into it and really start to invest in the time they're spending and start asking questions, start using equipment. By that second and then third session, the comfort level it goes from, down here to up here pretty easily.
Right.
And the same thing applied to the folks that were there, and one of the staff is a fairly sensitive fellow. So his experience there was unique too.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a funny text today, and I think I can share this. I'm going to anyway, from Adriana, the executive director, and she's just randomly texted me today and said, essentially every time she goes in, she talks to the ghosts, and then every time she leaves, like, I'm leaving, you can't come with me, which is the cutting ties concept, which we made clear to everybody they should do.
Right.
I didn't mean every time you leave work, but the investigation part.
It's better to be safe than sorry.
That's exactly what I said. Safety first. So,
and I feel she was fairly sensitive as well.
I think so too. Yes, exactly. And it all made for a really positive experience. And we had some activity happen. There were some things that occurred. Certainly, some equipment was very active, and hopefully we'll be able to share a good representation of our experience there and reflect with them about the experience as well, and what may have been happening since then, because this was probably a month ago, right?
Right.
At least a couple of weeks ago. So, and more rehabbing has been done to the space. They're actually going to open on Friday evening of this week, and go live, with the site. So, just to finish the plug on the Common Wheel, obviously sale items, bikes and equipment and all that good stuff, but also some really fantastic programs like an Earn a Bike, where the local kids can come in, they'll pick a bike, they'll learn how to maintenance it and service it. They'll learn safety on the road. They'll get a helmet and a light. And at the end of the program course time, they get to keep the bike and then have a ride for life. So just an outstanding. Really
do they do some restoration work on them too? Or is that?
It can, yeah. I mean, again, depends what the bike needs.
Right.
Sometimes they're donated bikes for a large part. They'll find the size appropriate one for the person. Not what they sell separately. There's some fairly nice equipment wise that, bikes that you can buy. And some not so expensive ones too, but anybody who rides bikes knows that you can get deep pretty quick, and that's okay. But that's not exactly the intent of the program side and the service side of it. So, and the Northwest River Trail this time of year is a very active place. It's a great spot. Being along the Susquehanna is a cool thing to do, and then all the river towns all have something to do while you're here. So, come hungry. You'll have good places for lunch or dinner. And then,
so if you come to Langston County for a weekend, you could definitely hit that trail. It's definitely worth it. So
absolutely. See,
tying it all together here, Jamie.
We're never going to run out of stuff to do here.
So anyway, so that's next week. We will be live from there. We'll see how that goes. You never know with a live on the road episode.
We did one, so then now we think we can do them all, right?
So, and then I think I pulled this out the slide off your schedule. So you were talking about Dark Watchers in 2 weeks. So do I have that wrong?
I think I'm in the place of Hotel Hershey.
Okay. So
and then June 11th, I think is Harpers Ferry, West Virginia.
Okay.
So we'll go Dark Watchers in Selma, and then Harpers Ferry.
Okay. So
and then behind that, probably in that window, we'll talk about the Haldeman.
Yep. So.
And
just so people can plan their Tuesday nights, Jamie and I are kicking around the idea of taking the month of July off. We know it'll be something new. We haven't taken a break in almost a year, but we're going to take the month off. I'm away for a week or two, and we need some time to recoup and figure out some stuff. But we'll come back in August strong and ready, and maybe a new opening intro or something like that. We'll see.
And there's some college visits coming up too. So
there are, lots going on this summer.
How'd that happen? So yes. So to be determined though, no plan for sure.
So,
all right, sir. I think
Jamie,
that's what we got.
Yeah. Our typical places that we are. But other than that, yeah. So, and we will be at Boobies this weekend, so hopefully we'll have some interesting stuff going on there.
Oh, don't you worry. I found a map of cryptids from around the world in the research for this. So I can. There's no place you can go literally that will be safe from a fear that you didn't know you should be afraid of.
Right.
So more to come on that too.
Yep. One thing that we do want to say, we want to keep our paranormal team in our thoughts. One of the team members, our founder, had family member had surgery this week, and I'm sure the road to recovery is going to be long. Things went well, from what I understand, but
yeah, Lisa is one of our Jotniks members, our family here, and a successful procedure yesterday. Almost 12-hour procedure for that matter. So it was intense, and obviously could have gone a lot of different directions. But the road to recovery now is in front of her, and for her and her family, nothing but the best, and all the positive thoughts that can be shared from anybody, we'll take it and put it all together for her. So we got you.
So we're thinking about you, Lisa. We're thinking about Andrew, Melissa, everybody who's involved. So
absolutely,
you're in our thoughts and prayers. So
you got this.
Yep. So, all right. Well, on that note, Jamie, I think we're going to say goodnight and see everybody next week.
That's right. So thanks all. Pleasure as always. See you soon.
Good night.